Hola, hola! Welcome everybody to season 3 of the Chicago Techies podcast, a podcast focused on highlighting the voices of Chicago techies and their experiences. This season, we will be hearing from seasoned entrepreneurs to rising stars making their mark. We'll dive into their triumphs, their challenges, and all the unique experiences that have shaped their journeys. I'm your host, Ceci Fischer-Benitez. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Niharika. Thanks for joining me on the Chicago Techies podcast. How are you?
I am good, and thanks, Ceci, for having me here.
I'm so excited to talk to you.
Excited to have this conversation with you.
See, I'm so excited that I'm interrupting you already. Like even you're just saying hello. But you and I go way back now.
Yes.
For those who don't know, I think most of people know because I've mentioned it a handful of times in the last couple episodes. But I was part of the Chicago Blend Fellowship recently in the last year, and Niharika just happened to be my mentor, and I was so excited because Sal kept teasing me like every time that I would see him, like I'm so excited for you to meet her. I'm so excited, and I'm like, who is it? Just tell me. But he wouldn't tell me, and I literally had to wait until I met you, and I was like, I get it now. I get why he was so excited because we have so much in common, and I respect so much the work that you do. So I'm excited to have you in the podcast and talk to you a little bit about your background and the things that you have done.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the beginning. Tell me about you. Let's tell the people about you, who you are, where you're from, your pronouns, and your current role.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks again for having me. My name is Niharika Hanglem. My pronouns are she, her. I'm originally from India, born and raised. Lived in India for pretty much. I've actually only been in the U.S. for about 11 years now. While I was in India, most of my work was in healthcare and in education, essentially working in business models that typically serve the needs of populations that are typically located in the last mile. So, think about extremely rural or poverty stricken neighborhoods and so on. So those were the types of communities that I worked for when I was in India. I moved to the US about 11 years back. I've been in Chicago for a little more than 5 years now. Currently, I'm the program director at the Kaplan Institute, which is the tech entrepreneurship and innovation hub at Illinois Tech. I run a bunch of different programs here. Essentially, what Kaplan Institute is trying to do is build the entrepreneurial mindset among our students. So we really want for our students that, and I think I need to backtrack on this a little bit, but a lot of the students at Illinois Tech are first gen. A lot of them come from the south and west side of Chicago. Several of them are international. And since we are the only tech-focused university here in Chicago, our students, when they come into the university, they typically look at very traditional 9-to-5 tech career pathways. They don't necessarily explore opportunities outside of those traditional tech career pathways. And that's where Kaplan Institute really comes in. And, we hope that we're able to demystify what entrepreneurship and the world of venture capital is about and make it a little bit more accessible to students that typically don't have the networks or the connections or the role models in these sectors. So that's pretty much my job. I am here to serve communities, serve my students, and just building up the communities that I'm part of.
Yeah. No, I love that. And thanks for sharing more context around all the things that Kaplan kind of stands for. I feel like that's one of the only schools that I've that does something like this specific program. And we're going to talk more a little bit about that program specific because you had a lot to do with that program. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts about what influenced you to kind of go in that entrepreneurial route. Anything from your upbringing in India that shaped that interest, or what kind of brought you here?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I think my why, I guess, is really, and it's definitely connected to my origin story. Um, my growing up, my dad was in a job that required us to move every couple of years. I went to 7 different schools through my K-12, traveled extensively, and oftentimes, ended up in, growing up in environments where we did not have access to running water. We did not have access to electricity, right? Like we would have electricity that was rationed, like we would get electricity for like 2 hours a day and so on. And I think those were more in my formative years, and then of course in my young adult years I ended up living, experiencing life in two of the biggest metropolitan like cities in India, Bombay and Hyderabad. Bombay, now known as Mumbai, which is of course the financial capital of India. And the lifestyle, the infrastructure that I experience in these big cities, right? Like Mumbai is also considered the New York of India. I think it really highlighted the discrepancies that exist, you know, uh, in the same country. Like, just geographically, we were not so far apart from some of those places that I grew up in, but recognizing the disparities that exist, I always knew that I wanted to find opportunities where I could try and build up the communities that I'm part of, and really support making things a little bit more equitable. I saw a lot of like inequity in just my surroundings, and I knew that I always wanted to find opportunities and find work that allowed me to just do a little bit more, beyond just work. Even when I was in business school, for example, a lot of people would call me like the NGO girl, because they were like, why are you in business school? Like, why do you want to do an MBA if what you want to do is like social impact? And, I really do believe that we can create impact, and we can have, um, we can do like more mission aligned work, and still, have a relatively like good career and successful career and so on.
Yeah.
So I think that's my why. I know it's a little bit long winded, but I hope that answers your question.
No, that does. I think that's a really powerful, like, global perspective, right? That you kind of get to see because you saw two completely different worlds that weren't that far from each other. And as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking about my experience too. Like I grew up in a small village in Mexico, and we also still to this day have 2 days running water.
Yeah.
They're just starting to build infrastructure and and larger like roads and like cement in streets. Like I think that there's definitely like some influence there in the type of careers that we want to kind of guide us, and be able to kind of support others. And I think that's really powerful. Um, and what better than social innovation, social impact? So that's a great focus, right? So I'm curious, did you move straight from India to Chicago for work, or how did that process go?
Yeah. So I moved to the US for love.
Love it.
So yeah, I moved to the US to be with my now husband. You know, and when I moved here, this was way back in 2013. So like I said, coming up on 11 years in Feb 24. But when I first moved to the US, I was really trying to identify and figure out how I could translate the work that I had done in India, in a more US international setting, so to speak. And I ended up finding my way into the World Bank's innovation labs in Washington, D.C. I was part of the social enterprise innovations team. I worked at the World Bank for almost 6 years, working on various projects focused on supporting social entrepreneurs, and identifying like tech innovation and innovation projects that we can like really scale up at a government level. The World Bank typically works with governments, whether it's country, state, or city governments. So we did a lot of work supporting government agencies, and amplifying some of the critical work that needs to take place. So yeah, I was in Washington D.C. for almost 6 years, and then moved to Chicago about 5.5 years back.
And when you moved to Chicago, you had the opportunity to work with Second Muse. I was looking at your LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh, I know them. We are, Get Cities is pretty
Yes.
popular here in Chicago right now, and it has been for a few years now. How did you land that role?
That's a great question. So, I some people who know me know the whole story, but I have, I guess, never really like said it out loud. So when I was at the World Bank, of course, Second Muse is a great organization for folks that don't know what Second Muse does. Please go check them out.
Mhm.
But Second Muse is an amazing organization. They typically the model that they apply is they do bunch of different like projects across a few different domain areas. They typically try to do like these pilots that they hope will scale up and become like full like entities and organizations, right? They have some really cool projects in the climate tech focus, mental health, and of course get cities. Get stands for gender equality in tech.
Mhm.
It's being incubated within Second Muse, and it's funded by Pivotal Ventures, which is Melinda Gates' venture arm. um, so I knew of Second Muse through my time at the World Bank. I knew about Get Cities as a project even before Get Cities had a name. So that was cool. So I kind of like knew, what was being planned back in the day. And then when they were looking for, when they were looking for folks to come in and support what they were trying to do when they first launched in Chicago, I ended up actually being the first hire for Get Cities in Chicago back in the day as a consultant. And in that role, I my job was essentially to try and understand what programmatic interventions Get Cities could develop. And as part of that work, I think I spoke to more than 100 organizations in Chicago and some nationally. Spoke to more than 150 senior leaders,
Wow.
C-level executives, and so on. And that was probably like 4 months of work.
Wow.
And this was also uh, I started working there in March 2020, so this was also right during COVID.
Oh
And
yeah, that's like the
yeah,
epicenter.
it was yeah. I mean, backstory is that I was actually working for the World Bank, and I really wanted an in-office job because I wanted to like build community and meet people and like go out and you know build friendships and build community here in Chicago. And once I signed the dotted line on that contract and then started working for Get Cities, never saw the inside of an office thanks to COVID.
Wow. Yeah.
But for what it's worth, COVID made access to these organizations and to these senior leaders very, very easy. So we were able to like do some very meaningful work. We were able to adapt very fast to the pandemic. And yeah, I was there for a little more than a year before I came to Kaplan Institute,
Yeah.
but very proud of the work that I did while I was there. And it's kind of serendipitous of sorts, but I'm now back working with the Get Cities as part of the Tech Equity Working Group. For those of you that don't know, it's a coalition of about 25 organizations here in Chicago, essentially
Yeah.
trying to make the tech and innovation ecosystem here in Chicago a little bit more equitable. So I'm a member of that. So it's kind of interesting because
That's
I kind of
great.
helped shape what it could do, and then I'm now back in some of the workings that it's actually doing right now.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan and obviously also very involved with it too. I'm part of like the Tech Equity Network and we were part of the Mentorship Learning Lab with the Latinas in Tech mentorship program. So as a program manager for all those things, I get to be involved in all the things with them. So a big fan of that team. So I had to ask about it. I'm like, oh, how did you come across it? um, well, you mentioned after that role, you went straight to the Kaplan.
Yep.
So I am curious about like that journey to academia.
My father, my father served in the Indian Army back in the day, but as part of his role there, he was actually part of the Army Education Corps.
Mm,
My dad is through and through academic. Even after his retirement, he was a principal of several, K-12 schools. He won like the best principal award in like, the region that he served in and so on. So I've always been very interested in academia, and
yeah.
for a long time, I was very, very intrigued and interested and wanting to work in the world of academia. So I think I kind of manifested it years back, and I said, "Hey, I want to work in academia," and So I think I kind of like manifested a lot of lot of what I do now into being. But yes, I've never worked in academia prior to my current role. I did do some guest lectures here and there for universities in DC back in the day, but this is my first official role working in a more academic setting.
That's awesome. And it's program director of the Illinois Tech Kaplan
So
Institute.
I have my official title is program director at the Kaplan Institute. I'm also part of the corporate advisory group at Illinois Tech. I'm on the advisory board for a new initiative that I'm really excited about called the Bronzeville Opportunity Engine. And I'm also the lead for the BIPOC subcommittee within the larger DEI committee at the university.
Definitely a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Well, can you talk to me a little bit about that program, like the role itself? Like besides all the extra stuff that you do, like what was like the main core of the role?
So we run a bunch of different programs at Kaplan Institute. We run a startup studio, which is a community of practice for budding and aspiring entrepreneurs. We run a startup accelerator every spring semester, where we typically run 10 to 15 different startups through the accelerator program, distributing up to anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000 worth of prize money. We have like a pitch day, like a demo day of sorts. That's always fun. I lead a program here called Genisys, which is Illinois Tech's first ever venture immersion program. We have a lot of students that are interested in the world of entrepreneurship, but don't necessarily want to become entrepreneurs themselves. And we were trying to figure out what are some of the other ways folks are interested in, forming career pathways for themselves in this space. And of course, venture capital is, an area, piece of the puzzle when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation. And we wanted to demystify what venture capital was all about to our students. Like I said before, a lot of the students are first gen. A lot of them, come from the south and west side of Chicago. They're extremely hardworking. They have a lot of hustle in them, but they don't necessarily know these sectors. They don't necessarily have role models or
Yeah.
mentors in these spaces. So Genisys is really trying to demystify what venture capital is all about. It's a very experiential program. We've been around for about a year and a half, serving more than 80 students, and providing some support to about 40 startups, and placing our students with, I would say, about 12 different venture organizations. So yeah, I'm very proud of the work we're doing here, and it's been extremely validating to just see some of our students like career trajectories kind of take off in the space.
Yeah, and I'm impressed. You said it was 40 startups.
Yes.
I'm assuming there's been more that come out of Kaplan, but like
Yes.
that's already a pretty hefty number, I think, for a newer program, for something that I've never really seen before, like be
Yes.
done. I think it's really impressive. I was in awe when you were telling me all about what these students are doing, what they're like, because I had that experience that you're talking about, like as
Yeah.
a first gen also. Technically, I'm an immigrant, but I feel like a first gen, and I didn't have any of that education, any of that extra like introduction to VC. I had no idea what that even was. I didn't even know any tech roles, when I was in my college career. But I think it's super cool what you're all doing over there, and I feel like a lot of those students have like no idea how lucky they are and how privileged they are to be going through that type of programming. So curious of what have you seen as some of the challenges as you kind of like lay this program out, and what are some of the opportunities as well that you kind of see kind of springing from this tech innovation at Kaplan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the challenges honestly is, you know, it's not challenge as much as I think it's like really shifting the mindset. Like a lot of our students, like I said, um, I this is not like an official statistic, but I will say I've been here for a little more than 2.5 years. Um, 70 to 80% of the students I've interacted with all have jobs. They're extremely hardworking. They're studying, but they also have jobs. They're
Mhm.
hustling. So it's, they have their responsibilities towards their families, towards their financial security. So it's hard for us to, you know show them that there are ways that they can like advance their careers in some of these sectors, um, and have them be assured that this might be like a good career trajectory for them. And I think for me, I'm not necessarily saying, they need to be an entrepreneur or a VC from the get-go. Like, the one piece of advice I always say is go out there, get some work experience in, but know that this is and can always be an option for you, if you ever
Mhm.
choose to later in life. But I think it really is about shifting that mindset and making it possible to them, you know, making that concept possible. So yeah, I think that really is. I think the challenge is. I think that would be the main challenge, I would say.
Yeah. I can't imagine how I mean how I guess I'm trying to kind of go back to that time when I was in college and like not really fully understanding the scope of what was presented in front of me at all times, right? So how do you emphasize like the importance of like these educational initiatives that are kind of nurturing all of these future entrepreneurs and I mean not future because there already are, but how do you think our education system should be handling this
Yeah,
entrepreneurial
yeah.
ecosystem?
You know, as somebody who has had access to higher education, as somebody who has valued it tremendously, just kind of growing up in the environments that I grew up in, um, I will say that it's not always about formal education. I really think it is about experiential learning, and that is another thing that we at Kaplan Institute, like, we really prioritize. That we really prioritize experiential learning. Meeting folks from industry, like bringing in subject matter experts who can really like set context and make things more relatable for our students. And I think being able to see how what you're studying in a classroom setting translates into real world applications, that's the biggest and probably the best way to learn any concept or anything. Like, a lot of sectors and industries, when I rethink about it, it boils down to the jargon. It boils down to
Hmm.
the language that people use when it comes to venture and entrepreneurship, and just the world of startups. There's a lot of jargons, like we talk about tam sam som and
Yeah.
ROI and all of those things. And what does that mean, so I think, like, really explaining that, but really explaining it in a way that makes sense and is relatable. I think that is my emphasis in how I go about designing my programs and making sure that that conceptual understanding is not just something that you're writing down in a theory like sort of answer, but something that you can actually speak to because you've actually done the work.
You kind of spoke a little bit to like how you design your programs. What was that process like to even come to this Genisys program? Like, was that something that the university had thought of, or is that something that you kind of came in and wanting to kind of like revolutionize something, right? Like, and start something, or was that something already in the pipeline? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I mean, there was definitely an impetus, and you know, there was definitely a lot of support for us to build out a program in this area. The original concept was not what it is today. We have definitely gone through a
Mm,
lot of iterations, a
okay.
lot of experimentation, like understanding the needs of our stakeholders and our students and our community. Um, I am a big believer in systems thinking and systems design.
Mhm.
So for me, when I go about figuring out how I want to conceptualize and design something, don't, I say this all the time. And anyone who has heard me speak about my work has heard me say this like a dozen times. So I'm going to say it one more time. But I really do believe that the onus of success does not lie with the individual student, entrepreneur, startup. We have to build up the systems and the processes up for success. We have to build the systems and processes that allow for all of our stakeholders to succeed in equal measure, and offering them all the opportunities that they could potentially have. So quote me on this. I've literally like said this so many times. And I'm a firm believer in that. So I think when I think about how I design my programs, I think about all the pieces of the puzzle that needs to kind of like come into play. I'm one individual, this is also
Mhm.
my job. Hypothetically speaking, if I were to leave or someone else were to come in, like I don't want something like this that is larger than me. The impact of this is larger than me. It's larger than even Kaplan Institute or even the university in some way, right?
Mhm.
This stuff needs to exist in collaboration and in continuity. And I think for me that is very important, to make sure that those processes are being set up so we succeed as a community and as an ecosystem.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's kind of the way I see programs as well, and how they should be done and addressed. One person for a program is a lot, and I've run three different programs at Latinas in Tech, and I always kind of try to design things that are sustainable, and that doesn't always require like one person, or at least it's not just me who can run this. Let's shift gears a little bit to kind of like your path still, to this like this social innovation space, this entrepreneurship space. You also serve on the board of directors for the Delta Institute. Can you talk about the Delta Institute and what it is, and kind of like how you support them?
Yes, thank you so much for asking me that question. Delta Institute is an amazing organization that I'm just such a big fan of what they do, and I'm a proud board member. I've been serving on the board for about 3.5 years. I'm also the chair of the development board, and I also serve on the executive committee here. So yeah, Delta Institute is a Midwest focused nonprofit. They do some really amazing work in the climate sustainability space. They do a lot of work around agriculture resilience,
Mm-hmm.
urban land use, and so on. One interesting fact that I'd like to share with your audience is that Delta Institute actually designed Chicago's first ever waste management strategy.
Oh
So
wow.
yes. So Delta Institute is an incredible organization, some amazing people. The community is amazing. Um, so I'm just a huge fan of what they do, and I think it's really important work. What they're doing right now, of course, with climate change and all the challenges that brings with us. I think we need more organizations like Delta Institute to do some of this really important work for the times ahead of us.
Do they provide some education around climate change, or?
So they do a lot of work with communities, with local agencies and governments and other nonprofits. They actually also run a program called Boost, where they actually support startups and small businesses that work in this space. Where we just ran this program called Boost recently, just a couple of weeks back, and we distributed $25,000 worth of prize money to 4 startups that participated and
Oh
pitched
wow.
in the Boost demo day, so to speak.
Yeah, I've been kind of very interested lately in sustainability, in climate change startups, even agricultural, because I feel like I grew up with agriculture. My family had a farm. We had animals. We had dozens and dozens of like mango trees, and I feel like I should be more in this. Like interested in this space, because it is. I think it kind of takes me home, part
Yeah,
of it, and learning about the new type of machinery, the new type of software that is being built around this. And I'm like, oh my god, people's lives would change in Mexico if this like
yeah,
device existed there. I've been kind of slowly learning more about startups that are creating are focusing or have a lens in climate change, in agriculture, and just things around climate. I think it's been really fun to learn more about it. I mean, I feel like I've been clueless, but for the longest time until recently. So
Yeah.
I've been pretty excited to see organizations kind of doing more efforts around that.
Absolutely. And one amazing resources that I would like to share with you and for those, that would be listening to this later.
Hmm.
Their Delta Institute has something called the DELS. So the Delta Emerging Leaders, it's a community of about, I think,
Oh,
30 plus professionals that all work at other organizations that form the associate board at Delta Institute. It's an amazing community of bright, brilliant folks that are committed to sustainability efforts. So if you're interested, you should definitely apply and let me know. I can
yeah.
send a referral.
Yeah. And I know a couple of people also like interested in energy and like, and how that plays a role in all these things.
Yeah,
So that's interesting. Thanks for sharing. I'll definitely put it on the show notes as well, so people kind of can read about those initiatives.
thank you.
Um, so now, like, I guess back to you. um, I'm. What are some of the skills that you think are needed, when you're an aspiring social entrepreneur or someone that is looking to kind of get more involved in the industry? What are some of those qualities that you are looking for?
I think for social entrepreneurs specifically, I would say empathy. Really understanding the problem that you're trying to solve, the communities that you're hoping to serve, and understanding the root cause of where those problems arise from. It's very easy to say, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. But if you do not pay attention or focus on the problem that you're trying to solve and the communities that you're trying to build up, it's going to be a hard lesson somewhere in there. It's going to be a hard path. So and also I think social entrepreneurship in general is so much more harder, like, because there's so many lives at stake and things like that. But I would say empathy and really understanding the root cause of why this problem needs to be solved even.
Yeah, definitely empathy. I think that's one of the things that a lot of founders sometimes are missing,
Yeah.
especially that are not necessarily with focus in social entrepreneurship at all. But I think that's still a key skill for anyone. So, what advice would you give people that are trying to make significant change and creating these new ideas, new business models, new entrepreneurship? Like, what advice would you tell them to keep in mind?
This is, I think it's a very loaded question in some sense because, through my work and of course, I've been working with aspiring entrepreneurs for years and years now, even since my time at the World Bank and even before that, actually. Um, I think entrepreneurship for the sake of entrepreneurship, I don't think that necessarily works. So let me just say that out loud. I think entrepreneurship for the sake of advancing an innovation or an idea or solving a problem that your community is facing. Um, I think that is really important to identify, and it's really about identifying it, right? Like it's so. I guess my advice would really be to understand what you're trying to do, understand its impact, and solve for some of the challenges that are going to come your way. And it's easier said than done. It's not easy to do that, but I think it's very important to contextualize what you're trying to do with your business model, with your service delivery model. I think it's very important to contextualize that. And oftentimes, I find that if an entrepreneur is trying to do something and they themselves don't have lived experience in that problem or in that challenge that they're trying to solve, that they're not going to fully get that. they're not going to understand what it might take to succeed.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I ask people when they tell me they're building something. Yeah. I'm like, why you? Like, what happened to you? Like, what is this? How are you connected to this? It's always curious when people are really like, they have a lot of personal experience on it, and you can tell when they don't. When it was an idea that just came and that they think they can, Yeah. But anyway, thank you for that. I know that was a loaded question. I think I like to just kind of, keep people on their toes. We can start wrapping up. I'm curious about what are some projects or upcoming projects, or what are some exciting things that you're looking forward to?
That's a great question. It is something I'm very excited for. So I mentioned this right in the beginning. I'm on the advisory board for something called the Bronzeville Opportunity Engine. It's a new initiative of Illinois Tech's, essentially working. What we are trying to do is we got very lucky. We received a congressional grant, and we are opening up 16,000 square foot of space in the tower. We fondly call it the tower, the Galvin Tower on our main campus. And the Bronzeville Opportunity Engine is an initiative designed to basically support economic development, workforce development, and support for startups and small businesses in the Bronzeville community. It's going to be housed within Illinois Tech, and I'm very excited for this project. This actually sits outside of Kaplan Institute because, like I said, it's a much larger initiative designed for the Bronzeville community. I'm hoping to play a small role in this as part of the advisory board. I'm hoping to support this initiative. I'm very excited for this work. So TBD. But if anyone in the audience listening to this, if they want to get involved or learn more, they should definitely reach out to me, and I'm happy to chat more with folks.
Yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity. It sounds like an awesome project. I would definitely be interested in learning more about it. Just learning more about it. How can people connect with you? Where can they reach out?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a great place. I'm always open for coffee chats, and if someone wants to get on a Zoom call with me, and if I can support anyone has any questions, wants to get some career advice, happy to brainstorm and find a way. I'm always open to making new connections and supporting folks.
I can definitely attest to that. We had great coffee chats, and they were always very insightful, and I always felt like I learned a lot of new things with you. So thank you for joining me on this conversation. Thanks for coming to the podcast. It's been great. I love what you're doing. I'm a huge fan of you, and I always will.
Thank you so much, Ceci, for having me. Appreciate the time.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Chicago Techies podcast. If you enjoyed listening, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review on iTunes. Let's continue the conversation on social media. We are at Chicago Techies on all social media platforms. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week.